Alright, welcome to another draft physics presentation. I think it's recording. Anyway, comments, I guess, and I wanted to get some stuff on just the basics on force, but we'll see. Related to a Ken Wheeler video that maybe I'll play, maybe not. We'll see how it goes. Alright, so I didn't know they could make an autistic robot. Oh, very funny, interesting, haha. Let's see. No one cares about a dumbass troll who thinks autism is an insult. Well, sort of is, but okay. It's not an insult, just the facts. So again, that's the cowboy, no doubt. That's not fair. A robot has a better chance of getting laid. So this coming from a guy who's obviously he knows some physics because he's got such a fat ass, that he has to monitor, his gravitational effect on the world. Even the pimples on his ass are so monstrous, that he has to keep in mind all the time, some physics just to get around. what, what an idiot. Anyway, you have to pay me $1 billion to look like you, jackass. Alright, anyway, Daniel O'Brien, this is a response to him, which is the second response. No one cares, okay. Listen to DraftScience original criticism of Ken Wheeler. Read on his website description and tell me I'm the troll. Read on his website description. What's wrong with the description on the website? I'm sorry. You have to quote something somewhere. This guy is 100% reactionary. Reactionary to who and what? And I'm unable to produce original content, or what I call a troll. So amazing. The whole website is obviously original content. So I don't understand this critique at all. Yeah, it's impossible to understand. You're an idiot, and I'll prove it if you want me to. I mean, you email me some of your physics, or make a video, or do something more than type 7 words. I mean, people who are calling other people autistic really should be able to type more than 8 words, one hyphenated one. You really should be able to do better than that if you're so fucking smart. Well, then why don't you debunk something that I've actually asserted, as in what's on the website? Something outside. Interesting. Might be a little wind disrupting my vacation. Anyway, let's see. Hey, don't talk like this about anime. Well, we'll just delete that because that's just silly. Crap. Move this over, so then I can get to the buttons. So I'll block these people appropriately. Been gone a bit and sitting around another computer for development on Linux. Just caught up on watching your vids. Impressive arguments. Seems to me a slight rise in people who are getting your points, but still no shortage of trolls in sight. Correct enough. And let's state the obvious. Obviously, it's a troll account by the cowboy or mindless marbles, one of those two. If you take DraftScience balls out of your mouth for 2 seconds, I mean, what? Who does that impress? Do you think? Yeah, it might help get all this stuff done faster. Just trying to help. And I wish you would have the guts to, like I said, present yourself on the internet so people can create all kinds of metaphors and analogies about you fucking donkeys and shit, which you no doubt do. And it'll be really easy for people to imagine it once you bring it up, because you'll just say, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. He's a donkey fucker. Of course. I mean, just useless. Anthony F., who is also useless. Okay, even air has attenuation after enough amount of kilometers. Whatever. We're talking about, look, this is just a fact, okay? There's hydrogen atoms in space. Everybody knows it. NASA knows it. They've even suggested making an engine that would collect the hydrogen atoms, nuke them to create a perpetual motion kind of spaceship that could get from one galaxy to another. So let's not pretend they're not there. Let's not pretend that light traveling 13 billion light years would likely hit a few of those atoms, okay? Let's just understand there's a certain probability that they hit these atoms. So, what's your argument? We already know it's happening, so you making some kind of argument that it can't be happening is sort of retarded. I'm just saying that the consequence of hitting those atoms are that you hit more that are coming towards you than you hit going with you. That's a fact too, right? Why don't you just debunk that as a fact so everybody can just laugh at you and mock you and make, treat you like shit because you're an idiot. You're an arrogant, obnoxious idiot who's not conceding basic facts. Fact number 1, hydrogen atoms exist in empty space. Fact number 2, photons inevitably have to be hitting them. The photons that are traveling billions of light years. Fact 3, the light doesn't get scattered all over the place. It obviously gets to us pretty reliably. So your theory can't be true. Your theory can't be true. Jesus. And it displays plenty of effects like Rayleigh scattering. Well, Rayleigh scattering is, again, Rayleigh is based on particles, okay, big clumps of matter. Okay, big clumps of matter diffract light and scatter it, yes, because they have shape, like big giant water droplets, giant in the relative sense. Droplets of water in space are spherical. Their surface will reflect light in certain patterns, i.e. the creation of rainbows. So your comment about gases being clear is falsely premised. Again, it is not falsely premised. There's no evidence that hydrogen atoms are anything other than transparent. As a gas, when they're loosely associated with each other, that is, they're not connected in molecules or compounds, they do transmit light accurately. Just a fact. I mean, shit. As is every other sentence you spout. Well, again, you haven't demonstrated any false premises. You haven't linked to any evidence debunking a single thing I've stated as a fact. So why don't you link me to the Wikipedia page or some other page that proves that hydrogen atoms aren't transparent? Because they are, idiot. Unbelievable you could even say such a preposterous thing. Such a preposterous thing as what NASA already concedes exists, which is hydrogen atoms in empty space, and that they're transparent, and that's why we see light, is because it doesn't get consumed by the scattering of the hydrogen atoms. Just a fact. The atoms would hit the light from the sides as well. Yes, they most likely do. But again, the fact is, it doesn't create enough distortion as a practical fact. Again, you're denying the existence of the hydrogen in empty space. So go argue with NASA then, okay? It's not just me who claims there's hydrogen atoms throughout the universe. So go argue with the people who claim it's there. So scattering would easily blur light from those scales. Well, obviously it doesn't do that. So obviously the light, when it hits an individual atom that doesn't have a surface, right? I mean, can you concede that an atom isn't have a surface? Okay, all it has is electrons and protons, and that the light hits electrons, and that electrons move, and then they readmit the force in the form of pressure. I mean, can we concede the obvious facts that electrons move, and when they move exactly as the stuff hitting them moves them, then they transmit it accurately. If they're tied to a more complex atom and the electrons are all tied together, well, then the movement is changed because there's a bunch of other electrons countering the action. So for something to be transparent, there obviously has to be a balance in the electrons that permits a frequency to go in and the same frequency to come out, and stuff to go in a direction and to come out in the same direction. Those have to be the rules of transparent atoms, fuckhead. So you're just fucking wrong. You haven't demonstrated me to be wrong at all with a single shred of evidence. Again, I didn't invent some new theory to argue for redshift. I'm just providing you with a thing that already exists and saying, look, this already existing thing, that is atoms that are in free space, oxygen, hydrogen, helium, these are all atoms that exist in free space. that they could be causing the redshift. That's all I said, shithead, and you haven't demonstrated how that's wacky or stupid or retarded or any of that crap. All you've done is slander me and misparaphrase me and pretend I said things I didn't say, you lying scum. Talking to the microphone again. Alright, now that's called a great backdrop. Well, it's not exactly. I'm not too pleased with it, frankly. It's kind of tacky. It looks like a tourist trap, you know. But anyway, so Twiddleby. What these screen names? I'd rather they would be unpronounceable than pronounceable because they're so queer. Here's the problem with his arrogance. Okay, so this is what, another Ken Wheeler defender? Yes, okay. A fact is a fact. And what fact has Ken Wheeler ever... What, do you think it's a fact that he's bending photons in the ferrocell? The ferrocell is bending photons? Do you really think that's a fact, retard? Okay, if I said, no, sweetie, a rainbow is not a promise from your God, it actually is, then I present the facts, or I could say, look at you, jackass, a rainbow is not a promise from your God. Oh, this is just too boring. It actually is. What are you talking about? Then I present the evidence. So, one of those holds more true than the other to you, LOL. What experiments, can you cite a single experiment that Ken Wheeler makes claims about that's actually connected to a real experiment? I mean, one that you can just point to and say, Ken Wheeler accurately described this experiment, and this experiment demonstrates the existence of his counter space. Can you show me one fucking thing that shows where... Show me the professional physicist or any physicist who says there's such a thing as dielectricity. Go ahead, show me one. Dude, fuck you in the ass till dead. He has made some of the most relevant discoveries of our time. What discovery, you insane lunatic? What discovery? What? It's all just talk. He hasn't even proved that his gold increasing device for collecting more gold even works. What claim has he made that he's proven? Show me one. Many discoveries we've all been waiting for. What discovery, you lunatic? And if his discovery of these discoveries is your problem, then you've got a fucking problem. Well, again, what did he discover? He keeps claiming he knows a guy who's got this engine that's going to be 100 times more efficient. Did it ever show up? He's posed a bunch of questions in videos where he rolls magnets across, steel balls across magnets and says, what do you think's causing this? And then he never does the follow-up video because, yeah, he figures out that everybody knows the right answer and he's full of shit. He was going to say, it's this, this, and this, and then he finds out, oh yeah, I can't say that because that's a pile of crap. He thinks Tesla had the right answer. Tesla was spent the last 30 years of his life trying to make a death ray for peace. Tesla was an idiot. All right, with the backdrop, I feel like I'm taking a vacation already. All right, simple enough comment. And with the science, the vacation is the mental variety, no doubt. Ha ha ha, boy, what a zinger. Hey now, some of us enjoy cargo science as a pastime, So, I don't really appreciate either one of those comments. So, fuck you, Doyle. Yeah, fuck you. I'll just delete the whole thread, because it's crap. No arguments, of course. Oh, good, a dielectric comment. Yeah, hey, look, I know what a dielectric is. I never claimed there's no such thing as a dielectric. Ken Wheeler claims there's something called dielectricity, okay, because Poincare and Maxwell might have used the term, and Steinmetz might have used the term. So because some other guys 100 fucking years ago thought the electricity caused by magnets was different than the electricity that run through a wire, and they called it dielectricity, even though it's no different than the other electricity, right? Because a few of those idiots, those people of the past, the archaic folk, got some things wrong, like Benjamin Franklin getting plus and minus wrong. Therefore, we have to somehow break what we have learned, which is there's no such thing as a dielectricity. There's dielectrics. They're insulators. No doubt this is, yeah, there's the word insulator right there. I know what a dielectric is, idiot. The argument is there's no such thing as dielectricity. Shit, you people can't pay any fucking attention. A non-conducting some substance insulator. Yes, exactly what I've said in videos. A substance in which the electric field can be maintained with a minimum loss of power. Well, it just stores it. It's just the same thing as a battery, essentially. You're just shitting on him for vocabulary. No, there's a big difference between the word dielectric, which is commonly understood, and dielectricity. They're two different words, fuck for brain. I think you're the petty coward here. Well, I'm not the one afraid of the conversation. Ken Wheeler is. Ken Wheeler is a fucking screaming coward. I'll respond to his videos. He won't respond to any of mine. I'll do a live room with him. He won't do one with me. He's the fucking coward. Clearly. A coward. A slandering coward. Picks on dead people. Doesn't have the balls to pick on a living person. Because he knows he'd get his ass kicked. Scientists don't get emotionally triggered against ideas. Yeah, they do all the time. Are you insane? If you go ahead and publish a book, like the whole Electric Universe guy, Vilinovsky, published a book with a bunch of religious crap in it and pretended it was science. Okay, and the whole scientific community was in uproar because they thought it was disgusting that this creationist is publishing science books that are full of fucking God shit. Okay, attacking one personally. I'm not the one attacking him personally. How's it a personal attack that's for me to say there's no such thing as a dielectricity? And Ken Wheeler is nothing but personal attacks. Fuzzy-haired ape man, knuckle-dragging blah blah. I mean, all the time, constant insults, you fucking idiot. You're just shitting on him for vocabulary? Question mark. Well, again, you don't understand that the words have to mean something. What he doesn't have every person who has any kind of engineering or science knowledge has an understanding of what inertia means. Inertia as a concept has something to do with motion and even relativity. Ken Wheeler's definition is completely different. Do you think that makes any sense for him to have his own special definition of a word? So I could say the word fart and the word fart means really love. Does that make any sense to you? Nobody should be critical of somebody who invents new definitions for existing words. Oh, fuck you. I think you're the petty coward. Well, again, you haven't demonstrated that. All right, well, I'll reread this. Okay. So, fuck you. Garbage comment. So, yes, it just gives me more cause to do another Ken Wheeler video. I mean, his latest video is just complete jargon. He doesn't say a fucking thing. Just jargon, 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 all the way through. It's just one big, long jargon. So, we got all of this, right? Yeah, we got them all. Oh, spam folder, of course. Of course, of course, of course, of course. Oh, Anthony got in there. Good for you, asshole. Jesus Christ, you've been responding to the same John Wayne post for the past 5x videos or so. LOL. No, not really. I just pointed out how, there's really no point. A constant liar, all right? What's the point of reading a comment from somebody who's just every sentence is premised with a lie? Every single one. And I demonstrated that. I think that's a worthy cause. You should honestly email a meteorologist. I should email a weatherman. They do good physics. Man, you really are stupid. And explain to them why all the stuff they do is bullshit. So again, what does particle physics have to do with weathermen? I mean, the distance is so great. I'm not saying that particle physics isn't controlling the weather. I'm just saying you have to do an awful lot of different kinds of engineering to get from the physics part to the weather part. Because you found an airtight, unattackable reason for why it's impossible for one-way mirrors to work. Amazing. No, that's not what I've said at all. So again, just lie some more, right? I mean, what I've pointed out is that we only see one version because of our tiny pupil. There's versions of every image going in all kinds of locations. We don't see them. You can't see the light being diffracted by the one-way mirror because you're far enough away from it. And so you're just getting one of the bars of light. So if I stand far enough away from a two-slit experiment, you do understand that I won't see any bars, right? Because my eye is only going to capture one bar. You can understand that, right? That the other bars, like if I cast the image onto my face, right, at 1.5 meters away, the bars, if I'm in a dark room, you could actually see the bars on my face and in my hair. I could pull my hair out like this, and you'd see the bars over here. Do you think my eye could see those bars? If the bar's showing up over here, do you think my eye could see it? Oh no, it can't, can it? You're just such dumb, lying, stupid, fucking idiots. LOL. You're so fucking stupid. And so arrogant in your stupidity. Alright, so I don't know why meteorologists would have something to do with one-way mirrors. I mean, if that's not a non sequitur, I don't know what is. Meteorology to one-way mirrors. Because, oh yeah, weathermen use one-way mirrors all the time. I'm sure they would be more open-minded than the sewage of YouTube comments that you're stuck here dealing with every day. Like yours! Your comments are sewage. Yeah, they are sewage. I mean, maybe they're not quite as stinky. It's little scurvy poos rather than big fat, you know. Anyway. So, gonorrhea wote. Oh, jeez. Anyway, I admit I was wrong. I thought your understanding math was a 5th grade level. Let's understand, all math is 5th grade math. I mean, it's all just multiplication, addition, division. So let's not pretend. Formulas are just a sequence, and all the higher math is just knowing which way to do the math, you know, which part to do first. That's all trigonometry was, basically, is figuring out what part of the equation do you solve first. What parts do you add and multiply and divide first. And that's all the higher math is. So let's keep pretending that math is the answer. Math tells us all. Math tells you nothing that you don't already know, as I've pointed out, and it can only mean something to some idiot who could give a fuck about the difference between 47.5 feet and 40-ish. I mean, do you care? Like, oh, okay, my car, you know, if I'm going 40 miles an hour, my car will stop in 87 feet. Okay, yeah. Oh, 87.496828484 feet. Do I really need to know that? No. I mean, you're just so full of shit that you give a fuck about any of this exact math either. Because I bet you don't. I bet you just don't give a shit about any... I bet you don't spend any of your time fretting over the 5th decimal place. All right, in your simple-minded universe, think either move with you or against you. Yeah, that's how the universe works. That's right. There's force and there's the stuff being forced, and that's all there is, asshole. The wind blows, your smell goes that way. The stink doesn't go upwind. It's a physical fact, dumb shit. This simplification is only true in one-dimensional universe. Well, fuck you again. There's 3 dimensions. I've pointed them out many times. There's no 4th dimension. Time isn't a dimension, you silly, 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 silly dupe. Alright, since the rest of us live in a 3-dimensional universe, well, obviously, you don't believe in conventional physics either then, because they don't think there's only 3 dimensions, dumbass. So you fail again. You can't even remember that you're supposed to be opposing my argument. My argument is there's only 3 dimensions, shithead. We can safely regulate your bilevations to the humor section. Yes, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Except post on this board. Anyway. Liar. Anyway. Your explanation of redshift does not work. So it's the same dopey argument. Why? What's your great and profound and interesting reason why it doesn't work? Oh, let's read it. If a distant photon coming our way were to hit one of the more intervening hydrogen atoms, there is equal probability that any given atom would be going in all sorts of different directions. So again, they can't understand the most basic argument. So if I was making an argument about drag, right? So if I was arguing for Lesage gravity, all of a sudden they know what drag is. And also they understand the concept that you get hit by more stuff in the direction you're moving than the stuff going in the direction you're not moving, the opposite direction. So they understand it when it's a drag argument. So if they want to defeat Lesage gravity, they understand perfectly how you get hit by more stuff in the face than you do from behind. They understand Feynman's argument. If you run in the rain, you get hit by more rain in the front than you do from behind. So they understand the argument then, but somehow they don't understand it now. I mean, such duplicitous hypocrisy. I mean, they changed their physics to suit their argument. So now all of a sudden they're saying there's no such thing as drag. So I don't have to have a drag argument anymore because he's saying there's no such thing as drag. Amazing hypocrisy. All right, there is equal probability. Yes, no, there isn't, idiot. Because of drag, you stupid fuck. The whole Michelson-Morley argument, the ether drag, you still can't even figure that out. That any given atom would be going all sorts of directions, so the problem would have an equal probability of getting deflected in any random direction. No, they would have the much higher probability that the atom is coming towards it that it hits. A much higher probability. The result would be a diffuse glow. Obviously, it's not the result because the hydrogen atoms exist, the photons exist. So what's your explanation? That photons travel 13 billion light years through space and they never hit a hydrogen atom? Is that your fucking wacky theory? Distant galaxies would look like a street lamp through a dense fog. Well, that's what they should be looking like then, because that's the facts. The fact is the hydrogen exists, shithead. That's a fact. Do you understand? That's a NASA fact. We do not see this diffusion, so your explanation for redshift does not work. So again, because they don't see it, it can't be possible that there could be an explanation. And the simple explanation is obviously you can't see the diffraction because it's not happening, because the little atoms are in fact transparent. They're transparent, retard. Oh man, these people are so fucking stupid. Alright, so now we can properly block him. I mean, shit. Too stupid. Alright, let's see who else needs to go. Alright, we already got rid of him, so there, he's gone now. Here's the problem with your arrogance. Oh, with his arrogance. Here's the problem with your problem with his arrogance. Yeah, no, that didn't make any sense. So we'll just delete it. This is a garbage comment. Alright, even air. Okay, and Anthony, I'll give you another shot, but you shape up or fuck off. I don't have to take your shit. I mean, and again, if you're going to be so arrogant, you really should be right. If you don't have the right answer and you're going to be this obnoxious, that's just bullshit. You got to account for that. You got to account for your failure, and you have completely failed in this argument. Okay, so yeah, this one we'll get rid of. I thought I already got rid of it, so just delete it some more. All right, yeah, we're done. All right, so maybe we'll do the Ken Wheeler crapola. Let's see what the hell. What's that? Signet effect. Oh, that's not interesting. This should be somewhere. That's a lecture. Let's see what this one is. Ken Wheeler. There he is. Alright. How not to buy a camera. Look, it makes a bag out of poor whatever water buffaloes or something. It's disgusting. That makes this typical gripe about how, yeah, so what? I have $1 million worth of camera equipment. That doesn't mean I'm a millionaire. Yeah, it does, idiot. Anyway, so this video is just too fucking stupid. So we'll just jump through it because it's all the same jargon.
Introducing new Burt's Bees toothpaste. Fights cavities and freshens breath. Burt's Bees toothpaste.
One thing humanity has in common is they take a lot of stuff for granted.
So he has all this camera equipment, but he doesn't have a shutter button. You know, turn the camera on when he's actually in the chair. Yeah.
Scientists love to use the term force, and they love to use the term...
So he gets this huge, look at this, 367 thumbs up to 20 thumbs down. And this is just garbage. I mean, there isn't a single fact or rational connection of words in here. Not any explanation of energy or force either. He sits there and accuses them of having no explanation, and he has no explanation. He just says wacky shit like magnetism is magnitude and counter space. And, you know.
Waves, and of course there's no such thing as a wave, because a wave...
Yeah, see, there's no point saying there's no such thing as a wave. Yes, there of course are such things as waves. What you can say is that waves are emergent, okay? That they are created by another mechanism, you know, something rational like that. There's no point in saying there's no such thing as a wave.
It's a qualifier of something else. I love it when people say waves, they go, waves of what?
Yes, and I'll ask you the same question, waves of what? And you'll say ether. And I'll say, ether where? Where's your evidence that this crap exists? And how come it doesn't function like normal ether, like every other medium waves spread? Well, why doesn't your ether spread? How does the ether know not to make spreading waves?
In discussing geomagnetic precession or the toroidal geometry...
Yes, so any of that crap, geomagnetic precession. There's no such thing. There's no description of any such thing anywhere. There's no fucking mechanism for such a thing. All of this movement, again, I'll say again, there's absolutely not one piece of experimental evidence demonstrating that magnets, a static magnet, is creating any field that's moving. The field doesn't move. It just does one thing, out or in, towards it or away from it, okay, in a straight line vector, and that's all there is. And the two poles are exactly the opposite, so one pole is attracted, one pole is repelled by the two opposite poles. Quite obviously, that's the only thing happening, that's the only thing being described by Maxwell's equations. That's all there is. There is no this way, that way spinning bullshit. There is no coming out one end and going in some other end. None of that crap is happening.
Force and motion, i.e. magnetism. It goes to say, create space, force and motion, and magnetism. And magnitude are all synonymous with one another.
Right, so magnetism and magnitude and force in motion and creation of space are all the same thing. What the fuck could that mean to anybody rational? How could a rational person interpret that gibberish as being something they can put in their brain and say, yeah, I get it, it's like a chicken, or it's like an egg? There's no chicken, there's no egg, there's no anything rational compared to here. Magnetism is magnitude. What the fuck could that mean?
The only reason the universe has mass and magnitude is due to force vectors.
So the very thing he, in one video, will say don't exist is the very thing now he's saying is the only thing that exists. Yes, that's exactly right. So that statement, left alone, all by itself, is correct. There's force vectors, and they're straight lines, and they either radiate away from something or towards something. They don't do hyperboloids. They don't do toroidal fucking tornadoes. There's none of that shit anywhere in sight. In real sight. In evidence sight.
The native primordial attribute of inertia follows an equation that's actually found in Plato's Republic, 509d to 511.
509d to 511. So again, this is supposed to mean something. So that's math. There you go. You got a formula full of crap, full of not identified anythings. No velocities, no masses, no nothing. Just mush.
That equation is my discovery. That's why I actually tattooed it here on the inside of my...
Yeah, discovered, and how did you use it? Where did you use it? Why don't you show me you using it? Use it somewhere, please. Let me see you use your fucking equation to predict something or define what the results of an experiment are. Why don't you show how the formula works somewhere? Show me it working.
Right wrist. But defining that toroidal geometry, if you actually take a cross...
Defining the toroidal, again, that's this bullshit. There's no fucking toroids anywhere near the frickin' goddamn magnet.
A section of a force vector from a toroidal geometry. I don't know if you ever...
So again, a force vector going like this, spiraling somewhere, forever. The infinite tornado. Bullshit.
Seen this neat little toy. It's a toroidal slinky, if you...
Oh, what? So the toroid is the donut part? What's this part then? I thought that was the toroid. Well, it doesn't really matter. So he's doing the fucking donut all the way around kind of toroid. That's not a force vector.
Well, it's called a toroflex. If you actually...
Yeah, so if you actually see it, that's right. You've shown it. You have the little toy, but you have all the little toys. You've had them in your video. So why don't you just say, remember when I showed you that thing? Yeah, the silly toy.
You take one force vector of that, it looks like a circular loop that's bent on its side, and if you actually take that in the fullness of what it is, you'll actually, of course, see the donut or the toroidal geometry. Geomagnetic precession is...
Right, that is not evidenced in any experiments anywhere ever. It doesn't exist as something that can be identified as a fact. What exists in the real universe are straight fucking lines, and that was what was in Faraday's and Maxwell's mechanics. Are straight radial force lines that create lines, okay, of proportion because these are dipoles in magnetism. Oh man.
Speaking about the moving magnetic field, of course, then you actually have electromagnetic retardation, and you actually have phase, and you have...
So he won't say anything about what that is. Phase, you actually have this, you have that, you have this, but I'm not going to connect it to anything. Again, how is this gibberish an explanation of a mechanical thing? I mean, would he explain how a car works this way? You have the phase of the gas input, magnitude of the squirtation, of the oxidizing, of the blah blah blah, heatificating. What?
Phase disparity, and here we have time. Of course, time is only a measure of magnitudes.
Yeah, time is only a measure of magnitudes, which is retarded. No, time is a measure of time. Time is how long it takes for the magnitude to happen. That happens over a period of time because nothing can happen instantaneously and completely. Everything has to use force, and force moves at a speed, and that's why there's time. Idiots.
Time itself, of course, does not exist, but the creation...
So again, it's just a fucking idiotic statement. Time doesn't exist. Well, of course it fucking goddamn exists because we can see it pass. We can see the force take time to get places. We can see it. More exactly hear it in the sense that, you can watch the delay happen between spacecrafts and such.
Of time is an attribute of space wherein which magnitudes and masses exist, but time is not a thing.
So again, yeah, well, of course it's not a physical thing because, passing of time isn't a physical thing. It's not a thing. It's not an electron or a proton, okay? So time isn't matter and time isn't force. Time is just how the fact that everything doesn't happen instantaneously. So therefore there's time because it happens at a certain speed and the speed is slower than immediately. Now we have time. That's all it is, a byproduct of the fact that there's something moving too slow.
In and of itself, but of course time gives definition to all phenomenal things, and of course
Duh.
we swim in the sea of time, but that is not...
Yes, but that's not a thing. So the sea of time is his analogy, and yet he'll claim it's not a thing. Well, of course it is a thing. That's why we analogize it to things. It's because it's actually happening. Time happens. That's a fact.
To reify time, but actually to define a force vector, to talk about a magnetic field. And man, you have to go right to the very root of all the primordial misunderstandings that humanity has, because humanity is not intellectually evolved enough yet.
Oh, what a pile of, again, more crap. Like somehow we have to intellectually evolve. No, what we need is, better telescopes and better microscopes. The stuff is really, really small. We're doing really well, in a sense, to be able to see any of it. And every day that technology gets a little bit better and better. Now some of it's bullshit, like little black hole pictures and stuff. They're too synthetic, and people fall for that. Their little wave detecting LIGO-y thing and stuff. Yeah, that's all kind of horse shit.
To understand cosmic mechanics, we have all these precursor ideas upon which, by the way, the entire cult of quantum is built, such
Yes, the cult of quantum. Now, obviously, the quantization you should be able to agree with, in the sense that you're arguing there's an ether, the earth ether is perturbated, and clearly there's a size to perturbations. There's not a half a photon. You could probably agree with that, Mr. Wheeler. There's no half photons, there's no half spins, there's no half this, no half that. That all that crap is rubbish. The quanta idea is a pretty sensible idea. Maybe you could agree with that, because that isn't incompatible with your little silly ether.
as the wave-particle duality. Speaking about light or photon particles, well, light doesn't move.
So again, they never speak of photon particles. So again, why argue with it? Even somebody like Feynman, who concedes it's in every way a particle and actually overtly states it shouldn't be understood as a wave, even he, talks about it as if it's a wave.
The so-called speed of light is a rate of induction. There's no such thing as...
Yeah, well, the rate of induction or its speed. So you're just basically saying, well, is it riding on a tricycle, or is it hydroplaning on a layer of water, or is it, how is it getting from one place to another? Who cares? We all know it's getting from one place to another. Who cares how it gets there? When we say how fast something's going, we don't care whether it's a perturbation or this or that. We just care that the something, is obviously goes from one place to another place. Now, if you just want to say it's not the same photon traveling, instead there's a row of dominoes between the two dominoes, what's the difference realistically? What's the difference? You poke something at one end, domino, and you receive domino at the other end. Who cares what's in between? Does that really matter? Does it matter enough where you say there's no such thing as speed? Well, of course there is. There's how fast the dominoes fall.
There's a wave-particle duality, because a wave is not a thing. A wave is what something else does. Light is certainly not a particle, and there cannot be any dualities in nature because of fundamental denotation.
Right, there are no dualities, but the point is your medium has to be made out of something. So for you to say light is not a particle, well, what if your ether is made out of particles? What if your ether is literally made out of some kind of domino? Well, wouldn't that count as a particle?
Of duality is duplicitousness, and there is no duplicity within natura naturans, or Mother Nature, or the cosmic mechanics, or universal cosmic mechanics, either in whole or in part. There cannot be any duality. So I always laugh.
Again, that's just more nonsense, in the sense that obviously some things can have dual purpose. Two animals of different varieties can actually mate and sometimes create a bisected thing. I mean, to say there's no duality is just retarded. I mean, obviously you can't have contradictions. So it can't be two things that are fundamentally different at the same time.
Every time I hear the words wave-particle duality, or even hearing...
Yes. So we're all correct in pointing out that conventional physics is silly. And it's silly for them to sit there and agree to accept a silly compromise. Well, we just won't argue about it anymore, and we'll just play this game like it's whatever we want it to be, whenever we want it to be that. I mean, it is a bullshit answer for scientists to settle for garbage as the right answer.
The word quantum, or even hearing the word...
Yes, the word quantum makes perfectly good sense. The whole Planck idea is perfectly sensible. You don't have any evidence debunking any of that, so why are you pretending the word quantum is the problem? Quantum isn't the problem. You obviously have a problem with particle theory, and obviously physics doesn't think any of these things they call particles are actually particles, so why are you complaining? They obviously think they're all waves.
Photon. There's all these fundamental misunderstandings. There's 1,000 different things you could actually stump, a PhD particle physicist of either physics or quantum mechanics.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's really true. They don't have any answers, as Piro demonstrates. They got no answers for this bullshit. Waving what? And their field just turns into mush. Well, it's in the mushy field that we can't detect somehow. That magnet fieldy thing that's somehow there but not there. It doesn't have any energy in it, but when we need it to, it will. And yeah, just it's nonsense. The magical gravity attraction force. Yeah, it's bent space. It just, pulls things in by the pull thingy. The stuff knows that the geometry says so. Geometry says so. I mean, that is a silly answer for why something moves. Geometry says so. Huh? So you don't need a force. Nothing needs to happen. Don't have to be pulled. Don't have to be pushed. It just does it.
Or quantum physics. Just ask them to define a field. Ask them to define energy. Ask them to define...
Well, define ether. Go ahead. Give me your best shot. What is ether made out of? What is it? How does it work?
And polarity. Fundamentally, of course, defining polarity, we actually have to understand what polarity means. And of course, everybody thinks of polarity two-dimensionally. Well, we have poles here. We start from a midpoint.
Yeah, well, it sort of always is that way. Up, down, right, left, forward, back, plus, minus, S, N, all that kind of comes in those forms, poles, opposites. So there's only two of them.
Usually people actually draw, not nature's line, but a starting point with the pencil, draw a line to point B. And of course,
yeah, that's right. Nice straight line. There are straight lines in the universe. Straight line force controls everything. That's just a truth, Ken. There's none of this hurly-burly, bullshitty, whatever. Stuff ain't doing any of that crap. It doesn't have any energy to do it. For something to move, there has to be a force that acts on it. There's just no evidence ever provided that something can move without a force acting on it. No evidence to believe that anything moves without a force acting on it. It can't do this bending stuff unless a force acts on it. That's the fact.
Of course, that's not only two-dimensional, it's inaccurate. A true cosmic mechanics force vector is from counter space. But even then, that's only two-dimensional. A true force vector
from counter space, which is like material space or something, right? I mean, space is assumed to be nothing, so counter space is assumed to be something. Counter space has magnitude, space doesn't have magnitude. Something like that, right? I mean, isn't this just such a backward way of getting to the point by calling it counter space? I mean, that's like calling honest people liars. Why would I bother doing it that way?
Course is three-dimensional. It's really hard to bend one this way. I actually bent a perfect one and took it to the Science and Energy Conference. It got bent in the process of flying to Idaho, and then someone else liked it so much they thought it was like an arc sculpture. They begged me for it, and I gave it. It's just a bent
crooked wire. I mean, obviously the people at that convention are insane. Obviously.
Piece of wire. If you actually hold it on this end, it's supposed to make a perfect circle, but here you can actually see a perfect... This is not perfect. I could bend this a lot better.
So here you actually see a perfect... Well, it's not perfect. I mean, this is shit all the time, but obviously this is not the universe. There's straight lines all over the place. Light isn't traveling 13 billion years across space doing this kind of horse shit for no reason because somehow the light knows I do this. This is what I do. We have no evidence that there's any kind of radius to that circle, any kind of width to it, any kind of anything. And there would be evidence if it was doing this kind of horse shit. Photons are insanely small. And there's no evidence they're doing any curly crap.
Spent like 1 minute bending this. But this gives you kind of an idea. A three-dimensional force vector. If you extrapolate this out, this is painting, if you will, the interior and exterior dimensions of a torus.
It's the interior and the exterior. Now, does that make any sense? No.
Enter now in geomagnetic precession.
Whatever that is. Let's see a wire of that. Show me a wire diagram of... Can you do it in a balloon character or something? Geomagnetic precession. Can you make a balloon character out of it? Something?
phase disparity.
Oh, yeah, can we have some of that phase disparity thrown in? Like, those would be two different things that would be out of phase, right? Not the same thing. Like, one photon can't be out of phase with itself, can it?
Electromagnetic retardation.
There's lots of retardation going around, that's for sure.
And the toroidal geometry that defines force and motion.
Again, more bullshit. There's no evidence of any fucking toroids except for, Dunkin' Donuts. There are none in physics and nature. There's no fucking goddamn toroids anywhere. Just bullshit. I mean, smoke rings, you can mechanically make them in mediums, but there's no evidence they're elemental anywhere.
Centrifugal divergence, i.e. magnetism, i.e. create space. What?
I.e. magnetism, i.e. create space. Now, how do you put those two phrases together? How does that make any sense? Create space with a magnet. A magnet creates space? Where's the evidence of that? Where do I go to find the experiment that demonstrates the magnets making space? Well, anyway, it's more of the same. I should have sped this up, actually. But it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just every single sentence is horse shit. And he gets rewarded for talking this fucking shit. So depressing. Alright, so that's enough. Really have been rambling on long enough. Yeah, I made enough points, I think. Alright, so till the next time. I mean, I think he talks in here about Steinmetz, actually. And dielectricity, but I'm not sure. I really don't want to jump.
There is a perturbation, which is, of course, everything is pressure modality. Everything is force and motion, inertia, acceleration.
Yes,
everything
pressure.
is
Everything
anything
is pressure.
at all. Is that the ether within the vicinity, or the topos, using the ancient Greek term, the topos of that magnet, there is a perturbation, which is, of course, everything is pressure modality. Everything is force and...
So a perturbation would have to have a frequency. There's no evidence that magnets are producing an innate frequency. Like they're perturbating, like they're vibrating a medium. There's every evidence that they're just shooting a bunch of force at random perturbation. A bunch of force. But anyway, jump ahead a little more.
Just like this is polarity. Here's polarity right here. You see this battery is a positive and a negative right here. Well, that's polarity. It is a positive charge here and a negative charge. Now, this is the discharge point. There's only charge and...
Oh, right. So discharge and charge. So the discharge part and the consume part wouldn't be the definition of polarity. So again, he's mocking the word polarity as if it doesn't make any sense, when that's exactly what people are just saying. One end stuff shit comes out of, one end stuff shit goes into. Now, obviously, that happens with a battery in a sense, but that just has to do with the pressure of the electrons. The electrons are closer together in one end of the battery, and they're further apart in the other end of the battery, and that's all the difference there is. But nothing ever, the only thing that moves is the same thing that moves through, photons, energy. The stuff moving the speed of light is the only shit moving through the damn thing, or in or out of the thing.
Because at the center of a magnet, if you take a Gauss meter and you stick it between two powerful magnets, you let them smash together.
So this is another idiotic remark about gravity again. So yes, we all know that if you could make a bubble inside the center of the Earth, there'd be no gravity in the bubble, because you have just as much mass on one side of you as you have about mass on the other side of you. So you're really being pulled. So there's a ton of gravity affecting you. It's just all balanced, so you don't feel any of the gravity, okay? Because it's balanced. And the fact is, though, that if you were to actually make that bubble, you'd have to use an insane amount of energy, force, to push the magma, the molten stuff that's being melted by all the pressure. There's so much pressure that you'd have to build a structure which would create huge amounts of energy to be able to make that bubble. So that making that bubble obviously would take a ton of energy, and that is basically proving that there's a ton of gravity actually. There's not an absence of gravity. No, there's a ton of it. And you just happen to be in a place where you've protected yourself from it. You put a force field around to force the pressure away, because now the pressure is in the form of chemical energy. Gravity is converted into heat. And pressure.
One thing. Fundamentally, there is only dielectricity and magnetism.
There you go. So he said the fucking word. Fundamentally, there's only dielectricity. Did you hear that shit for brain fucker? Dielectricity. That's the concept that's bullshit. That's the concept that disappeared 100 years ago. Nobody in modern physics uses any such term as dielectricity because there is no fucking such thing. You stupid shit. Alright, this is what it probably says.
For the Earth, there would be no gravity. You'd be weightless. But
so again, the argument is, no, there's really a ton of gravity. It's like being in between two planets, planet A, planet B, and you're right in between the two planets. Now, you'd be stupid to say there's no gravity. You'd sort of understand that, no, there's a balance between I'm getting pulled in both directions equally, so I don't feel any necessity to move in a particular direction, but I'm clearly being affected by gravity. There's no such thing as not being in gravity. You can't escape gravity. If you're in the middle of empty space and there's not a damn thing around, you're still being affected by a ton of gravity. Actually, more gravity. Planets mean, if you're being moved towards a planet, that means you're being affected by less gravity because it's absorbed the damn gravity by accelerating towards you.
at the center of a electrostatic or dielectric, there's the highest concentration of same. Center of gravity, there's no gravity. At the center of a magnet, there's no magnetism. But it's complete opposite. Oh, that really tells you something.
No, this is just horseshit, right? I mean, there's no such thing as technically the center of a magnet because the magnets are just all lined up. It's a bunch of little magnets inside the magnet. So you can sort of understand that if you're in the center of the magnet, there's a negative below you and a positive above you kind of thing. You're always going to be in the same condition inside a magnet. It's always the same inside a magnet. Magnets aren't gravity.
Fundamentally, there is only dielectricity and magnetism. Electricity is phi times psi equals Q in Planck of electric cake.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Another formula means nothing. Psi times phi divided by blah, 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 blah. Let me see you use that shit to do something practical. Where's your pyramid magnets? I thought you were going to have all these great you were going to demonstrate all these powerful new super magnets. That's right. It was all horse shit. Yeah, that's right. It was all just horse shit. You can't focus magnetism.
By the way, even more brilliant than Tesla, and with almost as many patents, and you've probably never heard of him, and he wrote tons and tons and tons of books, is Charles Proteus.
Of course, we've heard of him. You've mentioned him 7,000 times and called him a cripple, and you've just totally been rude about having to point out his physical limitations, which are irrelevant to his physics. But of course, you've had to point them out.
Steinmetz, and he himself said, even he wrote that book, Electrical Discharges, Waves, and Impulses, in 1917, I believe, and even he.
Take your wildest dreams to new heights and create a website without limits with Bluehost.
He then, over 100 years ago, said, all these electrical engineers, they have no frickin' clue. He said they're all screwed up in the head. They don't understand what electricity is. They've complicated it. He said it's a...
Oh, yeah, right. And he uncomplicated by calling it dielectricity. I don't think so.
A hybrid of dielectricity and magnetism. Of course,
a hybrid of dielectricity and magnetism. What could that possibly mean? How could anybody cognize that? How do I make that? Dielectricity is what? Because there is no such thing. What's a dielectricity? Where do I see it in a wire somewhere? Where do I find some dielectricity? Where do I find a bucket of dielectricity? There's no fucking such thing as dielectricity. There is the phenomenon called electricity, which is the migration of force through a conductor. There is no dielectricity. Or what is lightning bolts made out of dielectricity? What's made out of dielectricity? What can I watch that's dielectricity in action? It's just such horse shit.
Absolutely correct. And the only way he was actually able to come up with all this, some of Steinmetz's equations are over 20 pages long. You want to talk about brilliant?
So this is a guy who insults.
And here's something.
This is a guy who insults mathematicians, insults the whole concept of using math for most of this. Most of the conventional physics is math, and yet he'll sit there and glorify some idiot who makes an equation so long that nobody can solve it. Oh, that sounds retarded. That doesn't sound smart.
Else funny. There's a few equations that have never been done that Steinmetz wrote over 100 years ago because they're enormous.
No, they can't be. That's not the reason. The reason they can't be done is because he obviously must have pieces in there that don't have any definition, and so nobody can do the equation because they can't figure out what the fucking variable is, the squiggly line he put there. But, I mean, obviously it's not that hard to just put it in a computer nowadays, and the computer can solve the equation, so that's just horse shit.
That's something to contemplate. Back in that unevolved era in 1915, somebody wrote an equation so big that no one's been able to. It's not that it's wrong, it's just that it's too complicated.
Yeah, so now it is true that some wackies, I mean, some people did use the word dielectricity. You know, they coined the phrase, but it never caught on. It's not in any kind of real physics. Because everybody knows that they're not different substances, okay? And when they first discovered this shit, they could make mistakes. They could say, alternating current is different kind of electricity than DC current or something. They could make that mistake, but they're not going to make it now. And we certainly shouldn't glorify those mistakes. And that's all Ken Wheeler wants to do. Is he wants to take us all back to, a time we should be listening to the great philosophers who weren't clever enough to create, hot and cold running water or toilet bowls or wet naps to wash your hands. Didn't even have toilet paper, for fuck's sake.
That's pretty amazing, actually. It's the exact same reason why no one's able to accurately translate Plotinus, except for myself anyway. Actually able to accurately translate Plotinus today.
Yes, and he's the god, so he knows, right? He's, hey, I know my translation's right. I'm sure of it. I'm sure that all the translators are saying that.
I know there's 5 different translations of Plotinus into English. They have no idea what he's saying. He's like he's a Martian from another planet. It's the same thing with Steinmetz. Like this guy's an alien. We can't figure out what the fuck he's saying. Excuse my language.
So anyway, that's not true. So Steinmetz didn't write incoherent books.
Anyway, this is a pretty good bending, if you will, of a 3-dimensional S-curve, and it paints the inside of a toroidal geometry.
So anyway, he's blaming the existence of the word dielectricity. He's saying, okay, I'm allowed to say it because Steinmetz used it. So that's all he's saying here. He's making an excuse for using a word that nobody has a definition for, and I don't even think Steinmetz had a definition. So it's just bullshit. All right, now it's enough. No, I'm glad we got to that part. Oh, where the fuck's my mouse? Hey, there it is. I need a mouse pad. This table is shit for mousing. I can hit the control thingy. Yeah, alright. So anyway, till the next time, and such.